Hello and welcome to the Washington Urban Debate League's Junior Varsity Video Series. Today, we'll talk about making blocks. First, we'll introduce this concept and give you a few useful tips. We'll talk about how to use them in the affirmative and the negative, and go through some off-case arguments. Now that you've been to a few tournaments, you've probably noticed that you hear some arguments over and over again. This is either because they are an easy argument to make, or because it's simply a good argument that should be made against you. Either way, you can be reasonably sure that you will hear these arguments again in the future. A block is a pre-prepared set of answers to a specific argument you think you're going to have a decent chance of debating in the future. The middle speeches in the debate, the 2AC and the block, should be largely based off these argument blocks, allowing you to improve the quality of the middle speeches in the debate and help you save more prep time for your closing arguments. Let's go through the pros and cons of building these pre-prepared answers. Blocks can force you to think in depth about arguments outside of the round, where you have more time to do so effectively. Blocks are a great place to write down all those great ideas you have in practice, but never remember to bring up on the spot in a debate round. Preparing these answers also lets you consult with your coach and teammates about how best to answer an argument. It lets you add more evidence to your responses, making you sound incredibly smart. And blocks save you lots and lots of prep time. If you pull out pre-prepared answers to arguments you already know are coming, you can spend the rest of the prep on the arguments that are new to you. There are some disadvantages, however. If the other team is making a nuanced argument, your block may not quite be responsive, since you wrote it before you heard the answer. Be sure to flow and listen for these changes so you can adjust your argument. In practice, a block is a list of arguments against a specific argument. It usually includes a blend of logical arguments, or arguments supported by evidence, and extensions of evidence you've already read. Blocks should be organized. For example, if you're responding to a disadvantage, you should break it down into uniqueness answers, link answers, and impact answers. You should be aware of time when writing blocks. Don't take longer to answer an argument than it takes to make the argument, unless you really feel like you have to. Write your blocks in pieces, or have a short and a long version of all your arguments. That way, you'll be able to judge how much time you have left and what arguments you can afford to make. Here's a sample. We're going to write a negative on-case block against the novice STEM affirmative. On the left, you see the STEM affirmative as an outline. There is a risk of disease increasing now. Diseases can kill millions of people, and learning STEM is key to researching the treatments for disease. On the left, we have 4 arguments. 2 that are just logical arguments to make, that we have medicine now, and that they can't prevent diseases, they can just attempt to treat them later. And they also have 2 pieces of evidence to support their other 2 claims, that humans are resilient to disease, and that dangerous diseases kill too quickly before they can spread. Here's another example of a block, this time for the affirmative. On the left, we have the military spending disadvantage, and on the right, we have some potential 2AC answers. We are all familiar with the military spending disadvantage. We are increasing the military budget to fight ISIS in North Korea now, education and the military trade off in terms of their budgets, and that ISIS is going to attack the United States. Let's run through the affirmatives block. First, the military budget is huge. They have plenty of money. This is a relatively common knowledge claim that doesn't necessarily need evidence. Second, they offer evidence to prove that there is no trade-off between the military and the education budget. Then they provide some analysis. Even if there is a trade-off, why is it with the anti-ISIS budget instead of some other program? Then they jump to the impact debate. First, they offer some evidence. Terrorism is unlikely. And lastly, they provide some evidence analysis against the Rodriguez evidence from the WUDL packet. ISIS is simply not dangerous anymore. We have defeated ISIS and taken their capital of Raqqa. The Rodriguez evidence is simply outdated. When you're writing a block for the affirmative, you should have the following blocks when you're in JV or above: a 2AC overview of your case, a 1AR overview of your case, extensions of your first advantage, extensions of your second advantage, and if you have a third or fourth advantage, extensions for those as well. Solvency blocks, extending each major point that you make. 2AC answers to off-case arguments, including the spending disadvantage, the federalism disadvantage, the state's counterplan, the capitalism critique, any topicality arguments you think you might lose to, and any substantial disadvantages, case turns, or other offense in the packet. Additionally, it's always useful to make a 2AC block against an argument you've ever lost to, even if it isn't listed above. When it comes to the negative, they should have lots of on-case blocks, both for the 1NC and for the block to extend their initial arguments. Every JV team should have a block for inherency and solvency attacks on case versus every affirmative you're likely to hear: STEM, vouchers, charters, CTE, and civics. They should also have advantage answers for every advantage in all of those 5 cases, including both offense and defense. If you want to get ready for varsity, you should have a block for every advantage that the affirmative might read. When it comes to off-case arguments, let's start with disadvantages. The 1NC shell for a disadvantage is a block that simply outlines your case. You should have extensions for the spending, federalism, and trade-off disadvantages for the uniqueness debate, the link debate, and the impact debate. That's 9 blocks in total, so your block can be much more streamlined and require a lot less prep. When it comes to topicality, choose a topicality argument, either something in the packet or something you've created yourself that you like and that you will actually use in debates, and fully prepare, which by fully prepare I mean create blocks, for that argument. Create a 1NC outline, then create blocks for the following to use in the 2NC or the 1NR. First, an extension of the interpretation with some answers to common counterinterpretations. Secondly, extensions for the violation, including some common answers to we meet arguments. You should have a block that extends the standards. You should have a block that extends your impacts of fairness and education and why those are important. And you should have answers to the reasonability argument that most affirmative teams should make. Let's talk about counterplans and blocks. The 1NC on a counterplan is a block, but you'll need more for the 2NC or the 1NR when you extend the argument. For the state's counterplan, you should have a block on the competition, how the counterplan is mutually exclusive with the plan. You should have a block on solvency, how the counterplan solves each case, and you should have a block on the net benefit. What is it, and how does the counterplan avoid it? When it comes to critiques, the 1NC block that you read is the start, but you'll need more to actually win the debate and extend your arguments through the 2NC or the 1NR. Every JV team on the capitalism critique should have link extensions for every affirmative case that they are likely to debate: STEM, vouchers, civics, charters, and CTE. They should also have a generic extension of the impact debate, but make sure to adapt to the affirmative when you do impact calculus. They should have a block extending the alternative debate, explaining how it works and how it answers common solvency or theory arguments that you've heard before. And lastly, make a block against the permutation do both argument. This is the most common argument you should hear against a critique or counterplan, and if you aren't prepared for it, you're just asking to lose the debate.